standpoint and how they did from a writing standpoint. If we take a look at the math results, in 2022, 47.4% of our students passed the exam, and the passing rate for the state of New Jersey was about 2 percentage points higher. Our expectation in Cinnaminson is that we always want to be above, not only want to be, we expect to be above the state averages. So for both of these tests this year, with the results from 2023, certainly welcome news that the entire group, in both cases, were 13 percentage points above the state average. They were neck and neck in 2022 in both subject areas. The math test, the NJGPA assessed students' knowledge on the standards from Algebra 1, which the vast majority of the students took as ninth graders. A select few took it in middle school, and their command of the geometry standards, which most of them took as sophomores. A small percentage took it as ninth graders, and a super small percentage took those as eighth graders. So both of these slides are apples and oranges. On the left, 750 was the cut score. On the right, 725 was the cut score. So let's say that for the class of 2023 and the class of 2024, 725 was the cut score. On the left-hand side is the ELA performance. The right side is math. So if both sets of students had an expectation of 725, the students who took the test last year, we already know that because I said it, 93% of them passed, would have been 67% of juniors in 2022. Had the cut score been 725 a year ago, would have been 82% of the students would have passed. This past year, about 68%. So a bit of a difference there if we use that similar comparison, that similar cut score for both cohorts of students. Back in 2004, you may have heard of the No Child Left Behind law, which was passed under the Bush administration. And one of the requirements in that law was that you can't just, when you report your data, talk about how the whole group did, but that you should look at the different subgroups, the different populations that you have within your schools, within your classes. So these subgroups that we report out about, male, female, different races, Asian, black, white, Hispanic, 2 or more races, Native American, Pacific Islander, we report out those categories as long as there's at least 10 students in the group. If there's only one Pacific Islander in the whole school, and I report his scores, everybody's going to know that person's score. So this is for like confidentiality purposes. Also, students belonging to other certain types of programs, students who are in our English language learner program, students who have IEPs, students who come from economically disadvantaged households. Those are the subgroups that we are required to report out. We have Asian students. We do not have 10, so they will not be on the next slide. Same for Native American, same for Pacific Islander, same for students in our ELL program. We do not have 10 students, so you won't see them on the next slide. Ideally, in presenting these slides, I would present to you the percentage of students who passed from Cinnaminson and from the state of New Jersey. Unfortunately, the state of New Jersey demographic reportings will not be shared until the State Board of Ed meeting next month. We have to report this data within 60 days of getting it, and August 31st is 60 days. So unfortunately, I don't have that information for you, so we again have somewhat of an apples and oranges comparison. But as we look across the top there, print's a little bit small for those in the crowd. We have female and male. Both passing rates are around 90%. Hispanic, Black, African American, white students, 2 or more races, free and reduced lunch, which in New Jersey is the metric that is used for economically disadvantaged. And the last category on the right there is IEP students, so students with disabilities. We see those those bars in red for last year, black for 2022. Take a look at math real quick, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do with this. In math, the results were not as strong as they were in ELA, and we see some of these subgroups here the differences are much more stark. So again, it was a 68% passing rate overall in mathematics for the class of 2024. Male and female percentages of passing around 60% and 70%. Hispanic was about 17% of the students passed. African American students, black students was around 27%. White, a tad above 75%. Two or more races was 65. Free and reduced lunch, right in the middle of the pack, around 50. And students with IEPs also around 18, 19 percentage points. So we have always been a district that believes in the concept of multiple measures. We are not going to have students require them to go to tutoring, require them to be in a certain course, if they solely have trouble on one assessment. We're going to look at their classroom grades. We're going to look at how they do on the benchmark assessments that we're required to give. We're going to look at an array of factors, and then, as a new school year is upon us, provide tutoring opportunities that take place. Sometimes they happen beyond the school day. The high school now has a 50, 60-minute lunch period. Some of that can take place during the school day as well. When our staff members reconvene next week, be spending plenty of departmental time talking about these results, digesting these results, analyzing these results to see what can be done for future classes when they take these assessments. So in New Jersey, I talked about this being a high-stakes test, which, quite frankly, it is. But if someone doesn't pass the test, there are alternate pathways that have existed for a number of years now. This test was given in March. If a student did not pass, they have the opportunity to take this test again in the month of October. Everything that I just talked about with supports will be provided to those students throughout September, throughout October, again, using a lens of multiple measures. Some students may not have to retake it, though, because the second pathway has been in place for a number of years now, in which other standardized assessments that sometimes students take in high school, the NJDOE has also established cut scores for those exams as well. A lot of them have to do with college admittance, the SAT, the ACT, the PSAT, which a lot of students take as 10th and 11th graders. So if I'm a student who was unsuccessful on the NJGPA ELA portion and I scored a 22 on the SAT, I've met the state of New Jersey's testing requirement for graduation. So you can see there on the left, there's a menu that exists. You can see there on the right, there's a menu that exists for mathematics. Everyone has to take the NJGPA test first. Next month, or maybe in October, I'll report NJSLA results, and one of the first slides that I have to go over are the participation rates, because sometimes families have their students opt out, not participate. That's fine. This 11th grade test, that is not an option. This tests everyone to be able to take part in the second pathway, and the third, they have to sit for it first, and then they can use these other two opportunities to meet the state graduation requirement. The third pathway is called the portfolio. If a student has not been successful in the first two pathways, they work with a teacher, a certified math or ELA teacher, over the course of their senior year. And that teacher provides targeted instruction to them on all the different standards that they're supposed to be able to master. They take, short mini quizzes, if you will, with questions that are provided from the State Department of Education. And when they have successfully gone through that, the portfolio goes to the NJDOE. Knocking on wood, Cinnaminson has never had a student not graduate because they didn't do one of these three pathways. Knock on wood. Everyone in the audience, knock on wood. All right. So what are we going to do, as I said, in the next couple of months? So one of the helpful documents that we receive anytime we do the NJGPA or the NJSLA are called evidence statements, where the Department of Education gives us these documents that show us all the questions that were on the test. Excuse me, I take that back. They tell you for each question on the test what standard was covered. You don't actually see the test questions. And they tell you how many of your students got it right. So question number one had to do with a standard. It was based on geometry. 75% of your students got the question right. By the way, across the state of New Jersey, 65% of students got that right. So when we see that, obviously there's work to be done, but glad that we're above the state average. We will find some standards where we're neck and neck or perhaps below the state average. Over the past couple of years, when we analyzed data for ELA, the neck and neck standards, or the ones in which we tend to be a little bit below, oftentimes are when students have to read nonfiction texts, in which they have to read a science passage, they have to read a history passage, and then answer questions about, what was the author's message? What did this certain vocabulary term mean on line 32? Students tend to have more, and quite frankly, our teachers enjoy usually teaching literature more fictional texts than some of these more historical or scientific ones. The deficiency we have noticed the past couple of years with the math portion have tended to be in the algebra courses. And if we think back to the students who are now seniors who had challenges in algebra, we think about 2 years ago, those students for 2/3 of the school year went to school every other day, and the other half, they followed along online. And one of the big takeaways from virtual learning was that math was one of the subject matters for which that was the most challenging to do. So our next group of students who will take this in the spring of 2024, they were in school every single day when they were freshmen or sophomores. So we look forward to more continued growth on this exam. Talked about after-school support, talked about lunchtime support a few moments ago. One last thing, a little bit connected to this. Every year, every school district is required to produce a graduation report and present it to the Board of Education to talk about these different pathways, if any students needed those additional pathways for graduation. For the class of 2023, who graduated last June, there was no testing requirement. So that's why in 4 out of the 6 rows you'll see not applicable. We did have 210 graduates. Again, none of the students needed to pass an assessment for graduation, so they did not need to utilize the substitute competency test. They did not need to utilize the portfolio test, and none of the children with IEPs needed to use any type of alternative assessment. There are other graduation requirements. There are credits. You need to have X number of credits, which is determined by a Board of Education. You need to have 4 years of English. You need to have 4 years of health and PE, 3 years of math, so that's a requirement. There are attendance requirements. You need to be present in school X number of days. We did not have any students in the class of 2023 who did not graduate because of any of those reasons. And then the last question there, number 6, were there any students, when I asked everyone to knock on wood, who did not meet any of those requirements? Again, it was not applicable, and we have a good track record with that. That concludes the report, so just curious if any board members have any questions about anything that was discussed. No? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Goldburn. Well done.
Thank you, Dr. Goldburn. We're moving on to Section 8, correspondence to the board. Does anyone have anything to share? We did get a very nice thank you letter from Mrs. Kay from Dream Big Productions for the use of the high school stage, and Mr. Capello shared that with us this past week. Anyone else have anything to share? All right, moving on to Section 9, committee reports. We had one committee meeting this month, and that was Curriculum Committee, and Mr. Gaffney is going to share the minutes of that meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. The Curriculum and Student Activities Committee met on July 24th, 2023. The committee first heard a presentation on a potential transition to cashless ticketing at high school events, sporting events. The district at this time will not be making the move to cashless ticketing, but may in the future. The committee then reviewed a proposal to amend the calendar for the upcoming school year that would affect professional development, scheduling, and the last day of the school year. And finally, the committee also received an update on state testing, which we heard about today, and personnel. That's our report, Mrs. Fitzwater.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney. Ms. Iacone, can I have a motion to approve Section 9 committee reports, letter A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Blystein?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 10, public comments. Public comments on anything appearing on the agenda. Okay, we're moving on to Section 11, personnel certificated. Mr. Capello.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. A number of items under Section 11, certificated personnel. Under letter A, there is one job description, job A36, Special Projects Administrator. Under letter B, seeking the board to ratify and affirm the resignation, listed under number 1 in the agenda. Under letter C, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 15. Those items are listed in detail in the agenda. Under letter D, teaching overloads, seeking that the board to approve under number 1, the names listed in the agenda. The latter part of that, seeking the board to approve the following full-year overages at the high school for the stipend listed in the contract for the 23-24 school year. Under letter E in the agenda, there is nothing. Letter F, extra duty appointments, seeking the board to approve items number 1 through 14, and they are listed in detail in the agenda. Under letter G, there is one leave of absence listed by employee number in the agenda. Under letter H, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 4 as listed in the agenda. Tutors, letter I, there are 2 items we are seeking the board's approval on. Under letter J, student teachers, there are 3 names being advanced to the board for consideration under items 1 through 3, letter J. And under letter K, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 3 as listed in detail in the agenda. Mrs. Fitzwater.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Ms. Blystein, can I have a motion to approve Section 11, personnel certificated, items A through K?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Iacone. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Evans?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye to everything except I will abstain from 11H.
You're up.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to Section 12, personnel non-certificated. Mr. Capello?
Yes, and real quick before we do that, we do have some new faces here for quick introductions to the board. So this time I'd like to ask our principals. We'll start with Mrs. Jones from New Albany School. If there are any members of your staff you'd like to introduce this evening?
So we have Ashlyn Licky. She is a Holy Family University graduate, and she will be coming on board as a first grade special resource teacher. Then we have Kate Bexel. She is a long-term sub in first grade at the Alpha. And we have Mrs. Pisano, who is going to be a long-term second grade teacher, and she's a graduate of
Of course. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Other principals, Mrs. DeSimone, anybody in your crew? And Mrs. Melcher?
Hi, good evening. I'm going to be taking on 8th grade math at the middle school next year. She comes up with 10 years of experience in Philadelphia. She gets a master's from Ms. Tal Lesson, who we work with PLL students in grades 6 through 8 at the middle school. Also coming to us with years of experience in the Philadelphia. Al has also taught as well as PLL courses. Has her
To work with us, and this board is very supportive of all of the great things happening in the classrooms. And before we move on, there is one other introduction. I guess it's more of a reintroduction to the board, but I would like to recognize that the board just voted to approve Ms. Linda Colella, who has previously served as counselor and lead counselor here at the middle school, who will now be taking on the role of counseling for the entire district in Cinnaminson. So congratulations, Linda, on this promotion. All righty, now we are going to move on to Section 12, under letter A, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 13 as listed in the agenda. Under letter B, there is one item for consideration by the board. Under letter C, appointments, reappointments, and adjustments, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 24 as listed in the agenda. Listed in the agenda. We have a job description as listed, two jobs under item F, and those are for consideration of the board. And under letter G, seeking the board to approve items 1 through 11 as listed in the agenda. And that is personnel non-certificated, Mrs. Fitzwater.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Mr. Evans, can I have a motion on items A through G?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 15, construction, Dr.
Thank you. Under 13, letter A, professional development, numbers 1 through 4. Under letter B, field trips, as attached. Under letter C, there's nothing this month. Under letter D, curriculum updates for state compliance purposes, letters A through F in the attachments. Under letter E, the submission of the district's Elementary Secondary Education Act grant for fiscal year '24. Under letter F, the approval of the school calendar revision, which reschedules the February PD day from February 16th to Tuesday, June 4th, which is primary election day. February 16th will now be a student day. February 24th, which was originally a no-school day, will now be a school day. And the last day of school was originally scheduled for June 19th. It will now be June 18th, the day before, and that calendar is attached. Under letter G, readopting evaluation instruments, number 1 and 2, for the upcoming school year. And letter H, we are required each year to submit an emergency remote plan in the event that there was ever a long-term weather or health emergency to keep our schools up and running if it were to be virtual. And those are the recommendations for this month.
Thank you, Dr. Goldburn. Ms. Turner, can I have a motion to approve Section 13 curriculum and instruction items A through H?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Ms. Fleistein?
Aye.
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 Aye, motion approved. Moving on to Section 14, special education. Mrs. Llewellyn.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. Under letter A, contracts, there are none. Under letter B, student placements, there are none. Under letter C, consultant agreement, seeking the board to approve the following 10 consultant agreements as listed in the agenda as requested by the district for the 2023-24 school year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Llewellyn. Mr. Gaffney, can I have a motion to approve Section 14, special ed, item C?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Evans?
Aye.
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 Aye, motion approved. Moving on to Section 15, policy. Mr. Capello?
Thank you again, Mrs. Fitzwater. Under number 1, under letter A, seeking the board to approve on second reading the following policies that first appeared at the June board meeting, and those policies are listed in the agenda. And also under number 2, seeking the board to approve the codes of conduct for each respective school, and this is a requirement of the QSAC process, so that is why it's appearing on a board agenda. So those are the items under policy.
Thank you, Mr. Capello. Mr. Kenny, can I have a motion to approve Section 15, policy, letter A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there a question on the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Been approved. Moving on to Section C, business and finance. We don't have Mr. Egan down there this month.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. It's of funds that the board accepts the revised tour funding statement for services under chapter attached. Item B, that the board accepts the extraordinary allocation as attached. Item C, that the board accepts fiscal year ACERS allocation notice attached. And item number 2, fiscal year 23 reimbursement allocation as attached. Item number 2, that the board approves the ARP grant as attached. Section B, finance. Item number 1, that the board approves the mileage reimbursement requests for staff members as attached. Item number C, operations. Letter C, operations. Number 1, approves the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey advertise for the bid for the lease purchase financing for 3 Wolfington school buses for the Cinnaminson School District as per the attached documents. Item number 2, that the board approves the estimated tuition rates and hourly service rates for the 23-24 school year as stated below and as attached. Under letter D, contracts. Item number 1, professional services contracts, that the board approves the contract between Cooper Health and Cinnaminson Board of Education as attached, that the board approves the contract between Newman University and Cinnaminson Board of Education as attached, and that the board approves the contract between Evesham Township School District and Cinnaminson Board of Education as attached. Item number 2, that the board approves the indemnity and trust renewal with the School Alliance Insurance Fund for the 23-24 school year as attached. Item number 3, that the board approves the agreement between the Cinnaminson Board of Education and the Riverton Board of Education for food service as attached. Item number 4, that the board approves a change order for the energy upgrade contract with PSE&G in Hutchinson for a hot water boiler at the Rush School as attached. Item number 6, that the board approves a joint transportation agreement between Cinnaminson Board of Ed, Willingboro Board of Ed as attached. That the Board of Education approves the joint transportation agreement between Cinnaminson Township Board of Ed and Camden County Educational Services Commission as attached. Item number 7, under cafeteria management, that the board approve the contract with lunch and cafeteria data management as attached. Item number 8, that the board approves the rental agreement between the Camden Academy Charter High School and Cinnaminson Board of Education for rental of pool facilities for the 23-24 school year as attached. And item number 9, that the board approves a settlement agreement with the Cinnaminson Education Association for resolution of the defined contribution retirement plan payment as attached. Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater.
Thank you, Ms. Livingood. It's good to have you back.
Thanks.
Mr. Bromhall, can I have a motion to approve Section 16, Business and Financial, items A through D?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Turner. Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Evans?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion approved. We have no other business this month, so we're moving on to public comments on other matters or any matters. During the public comment section of the meeting, the board will ask public comment on any item. Members of the public are reminded that if they wish to speak when called upon, they need to state their first and last name and address clearly for the record in accordance with Cinnaminson Board of Education bylaw. Comments will be limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person.
Is it okay if I move this?
Good evening. My name's Ashley Neild, and I live at 1012 Highland Avenue. As you all know, I'm a therapist. I work in private practice with children, and I'm a parent of a student with an IEP, and I'm here to talk to you, as I do at every board meeting, about special education. Several parents have approached me this summer, and I have had the privilege of getting together and speaking with so many of them. And while most of them don't feel safe to get up here and share with you how they feel about special education in this school district, a few of them have felt brave enough to let me be their voice. And so that's what I'm here to do tonight. I created an anonymous survey so that they could speak to you, and here's what they had to say. Oh, that's my alarm for my child to go to bed. Sorry about that. So one parent wants you to know the following. The district refuses to grant IEPs to students needing services. The child study team is horrible. They break and bend the law at every chance that they get. Cinnaminson is known to be racist, least diverse, and the worst place for students who do not fit their mold in our area. This parent wants you to know that this student has what's going well for them, that they have them as parents. What impact has special ed had on this student's mental and social health? Our child is self-injuring in your building. Our child who loves to learn and is far ahead of many of his peers now hates going to school. Our child's weight is dropping due to anxiety and no or inappropriate accommodations. We know our child is made to feel different, and children pick on him for his differences. Doctors are concerned that the district is causing him more health issues, and it certainly is adding stress to our lives. If you have felt dissatisfied, have you considered moving to a different town? This parent said yes. Have you been told to be silent about your concerns? Yes. Have you ever feared retaliation against your student if you shared these concerns? Yes. Has the special ed system in Cinnaminson done anything that you considered to be illegal? Yes. Are there any teachers or service professionals you would like to give a special shout out to? And this parent said, Miss Jackie, the OT from the county, has been supportive. This parent wants you to know, as a teacher, they find the ethics deplorable in the school district. It would never work here. It's clear that the district values its Christian white population that fits the bell curve. We're constantly told to go private because the district refuses to do its job. So many parents are desperate to help their kids, and the people they trust don't have enough experience in special education. This includes high IQ students as well. I hope that New Jersey and the county start stepping in and creating countywide districts with checks and balances so that towns can stop getting away with exclusionary practices. And I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to read one more. Our children are treated as business decisions and not humans. The child study team and the director of special ed are not transparent and do the bare minimum to avoid lawsuits. Teachers are silent because they know they will be pushed out if they advocate for their students. This family left the school district. They felt their child was segregated from a majority of their peers, and their interactions made them anxious. Other parents shared their feedback with me, and they didn't feel comfortable having it read here, so I will email those to you later.
Thank you, Mrs. Neal.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public who'd like to address the board at this time? Seeing none.
All right, we're going to section 19, comments from the board. Mrs. Turner?
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzwater. Welcome back. Thank you to Mark Tyndall and the entire building and ground staff for all the awesome projects that you completed over the summer. Welcome to all of our new employees. We're looking forward to you joining our Cinnaminson school family. Thank you to Dr. Goulburn for the presentation on the NJGPA results. Very informative. Congratulations to Coach Mario Patrizio on your 100th win as a football coach. Thank you for your dedication to our athletes. We did a tour of the school this evening, and the schools look great. We're looking forward to welcoming back our students for an amazing 23-24 school year. The next regularly scheduled board meeting will be September 26, 2023 at 7 p.m. right here in the cafeteria at the middle school. Information can be found on our district website. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Turner. Ms. Iacom, can I have